Let me ask you something. Who taught you how to treat yourself? Because the way you speak to yourself, the way you allow people to handle you, the way you accept less than what you deserve, that didn't start outside of you. It started inside. Before the world disrespected you, before people crossed your boundaries, before life bruised your confidence, there was a moment when you forgot your own worth. Tonight, I didn't come to attack people. I came to wake you up, because the truth is this: no one can respect you consistently if you don't respect yourself first. I stand here today with one message that can change your life. Self-respect is not pride. Self-respect is alignment with how God designed you. God did not create you by accident. You are not random. You are intentional, purposeful, and meaningful. So when you lower your standards, when you tolerate disrespect, when you shrink to make others comfortable, you are not being humble. You are arguing with your own creation. And hear me clearly, when you respect yourself, you don't need to announce it. Life will respond to it. So today we are talking about one powerful truth: respect yourself first. There comes a moment in life when nothing outside of you changes, yet everything inside of you shifts. The same job, the same people, the same routine, but suddenly you see it differently. That moment is called awareness. And awareness is where self-respect is born. Most people don't lack strength. They lack recognition. They don't see themselves clearly. They wake up every day moving on autopilot, accepting situations they secretly hate, tolerating treatment that quietly hurts them, and calling it normal. Not because it feels right, but because it feels familiar. Awareness is the moment you stop calling pain normal. Think about daily life. You answer calls you don't want to answer. You say yes when your heart is screaming no. You laugh at jokes that disrespect you. You stay silent when something crosses a line. Later that night, when you're alone, you feel heavy, and you don't know why. That heaviness is not weakness. It's your inner awareness knocking, asking you one question: why did you allow that? Self-respect doesn't start when you change people. It starts when you notice patterns, when you observe how drained you feel after certain conversations, when you realize that some environments don't challenge you, they shrink you. Awareness is when you stop blaming the world and start listening to what your spirit has been trying to tell you all along. God placed something inside you before the world ever touched you, before criticism shaped you, before failure labeled you, before disappointment trained you to settle. Awareness is remembering that original design. It's realizing I was not created to be constantly exhausted, overlooked, or undervalued. The moment you see that truth, you can never unsee it. Look at how people live every day. Someone stays in a job that disrespects them, not because they can't leave, but because they don't yet see their worth beyond a paycheck. Someone stays in relationships where they are tolerated, not celebrated, because attention feels better than emptiness. Awareness breaks the cycle. It whispers, you don't need to suffer to be accepted. Awareness also shows up in the smallest moments. It's when you catch yourself apologizing for things that aren't your fault, when you notice how often you explain yourself to people who never try to understand you, when you realize you've been shrinking your dreams just to avoid disappointing others. These moments seem small, but they are loud signals. They are daily life mirrors reflecting how you value yourself. Here's the hard truth: people don't cross boundaries that don't exist. Awareness is when you admit, I never drew the line, not with shame, not with guilt, with honesty. And honesty is powerful, because once you're aware, excuses stop working. God gave you the ability to reflect, to recognize, to understand. That is not accidental. Awareness is a divine tool. It's how growth begins. It's how change becomes possible. You cannot respect what you ignore. You cannot honor what you don't acknowledge. Think about how awareness changes behavior instantly. The moment you realize touching fire burns, you never test it again. In the same way, once you become aware of what damages your peace, your standards naturally rise. You stop forcing connections. You stop overgiving. You stop pouring into people who treat your energy like it's unlimited. Awareness also changes how you speak to yourself. Instead of saying, this is just how life is, you start saying, this is not aligned with who I am becoming. That shift is powerful. That shift is self-respect waking up. And here's the beautiful part: awareness doesn't demand perfection. It doesn't expect you to change everything overnight. It simply asks you to see, to pause, to reflect, to stop running from your own feelings. Because the moment you see yourself clearly, you stop abandoning yourself to keep others comfortable. When awareness enters your life, silence becomes louder than noise. Peace becomes more valuable than approval. Alignment becomes more important than acceptance. You stop asking, will they like me? And start asking, does this honor who God created me to be? That's where self-respect truly begins. Not in confidence, not in success, not in validation, but in awareness. The quiet, honest recognition that your life has value and how you live it should reflect that truth every single day. Every time you feel drained after a conversation, something important has happened, even if no one raised their voice, even if nothing dramatic took place. That feeling is not random. It is the quiet signal that a boundary was crossed. Boundaries are not about pushing people away. They are about protecting what God placed inside you. And the truth most people avoid is this: when you don't set boundaries, life will keep testing how much you can tolerate. In daily life, boundaries are crossed in ordinary moments. A friend jokes at your expense and calls it just fun. A coworker adds extra work to your plate because you're reliable. A family member makes decisions for you without asking. Assuming you'll adjust, you smile, you stay silent, you tell yourself it's not worth the conflict. But later, when you're alone, something feels off. That feeling is not anger. It's self-respect asking why it wasn't invited into the moment. People often confuse boundaries with selfishness, but selfishness takes from others. Boundaries preserve you. God did not design you to be endlessly available, endlessly agreeable, endlessly flexible. Everything in creation has limits. The night has an end. The ocean has shores, the body has rest. Limits are not weakness, they are design. When you ignore your limits, you don't become loving, you become exhausted. Look at how boundaries work in everyday situations. When someone calls you late at night, every time they feel lonely, but never shows up when you need support, a boundary is not cruelty, it's clarity. When someone speaks to you with disrespect and expects forgiveness without change, a boundary is not bitterness, it's wisdom. When you stop answering messages that only appear when someone wants something, you're not being rude. You're honoring your time. Boundaries teach people how to treat you without you ever raising your voice. The world watches what you allow. If you keep showing up after being disrespected, the message is clear. If you keep explaining your worth to people who don't listen, the lesson is reinforced. Boundaries quietly say, this is where access ends. God created you with value, not with unlimited capacity. When you say yes to everything, you are saying no to yourself. When you stretch beyond your emotional, mental, and spiritual limits, something inside you begins to break. Boundaries are not walls, they are doors with locks, and you decide who gets the key. Think about the small boundaries people ignore every day. You feel tired, but you keep pushing because you don't want to disappoint anyone. You feel uncomfortable, but you stay quiet because you don't want to seem difficult. You feel disrespected, but you laugh it off because you don't want tension. Over time, these small moments add up, and one day you wake up feeling invisible, resentful, and empty, wondering when life became so heavy. Boundaries prevent that emptiness. They protect your peace before it turns into bitterness. They allow you to give from overflow, from depletion. When you respect your limits, your energy becomes intentional. You stop giving to places that don't grow you. You stop showing up where you're not valued. And slowly your life begins to feel lighter. Setting boundaries will make some people uncomfortable. That's inevitable. But discomfort is not harm. Often, people react strongly to boundaries because they benefited from your silence. When you change the rules, those who were comfortable crossing the line will resist. That resistance is not a sign you're wrong. It's a sign that something needed to change. Boundaries also teach you self-trust. Every time you honor your own needs, you send a message to yourself, I matter. When you say no without explaining yourself, when you walk away without guilt, when you protect your time without apology, your confidence grows, not from arrogance, but from alignment. You are no longer betraying yourself to keep the peace. God respects order, and boundaries bring order to your life. They create space for the right people to show up and the wrong ones to reveal themselves. They filter your environment without confrontation. Life begins to respond differently when you stop allowing everything and everyone unlimited access to you. And here's the powerful truth. Boundaries don't make you cold, they make you clear. They don't reduce your love, they direct it. When you protect yourself, you don't become less kind, you become more present, more grounded, more whole. In the end, boundaries are proof that you understand the value of what you carry. They are your way of saying, God gave me this life, this energy, this time, and I will guard it wisely. When you honor your boundaries, you honor yourself. And when you honor yourself, life has no choice but to adjust. Every standard you live by is a quiet confession of what you believe about yourself, not what you say on good days, not what you post for others to see, but what you consistently accept in everyday life. Standards are not loud. They don't announce themselves. They reveal themselves in what you tolerate, what you excuse, and what you keep choosing even when it costs you peace. Look closely at daily life. Someone keeps showing up late for you, canceling plans at the last minute, making you feel optional. You tell yourself they're busy. You lower your expectations. Over time, disappointment becomes normal. That didn't happen because the person changed. It happened because your standard quietly dropped. Standards fall not in dramatic moments, but in small compromises we make to avoid discomfort. People often say, I don't want to expect too much. But low expectations are not humility. They are self-doubt wearing polite clothing. When you believe your time has value, you don't keep waiting for people who don't respect it. When you believe your presence matters, you don't stay where you are treated as replaceable. Standards are not about demanding perfection from others. They are about refusing to live beneath your own worth. God did not place greatness inside you for you to live casually with your life. When your belief about yourself is low, your standards will reflect it. You accept half effort. You accept unclear communication. You accept promises without action. And then you wonder why life feels unfulfilled. Fulfillment doesn't disappear. It is filtered out by low standards. Standards show up in how you choose your environment, the conversations you stay in, the jokes you laugh at even when they cross a line, the spaces where you feel small but tell yourself you're overthinking. Every environment either expands you or erodes you. When your belief in your value is strong, you naturally move toward places that challenge you to rise, not shrink. Think about work life. Someone does more than required but accepts less than deserved. They work harder, hoping recognition will come. But standards say, I will not continuously pour into places that refuse to acknowledge my contribution. When belief rises, you stop waiting for validation and start aligning with opportunity. You don't beg for a seat. You look for tables that recognize your presence. Standards also reveal themselves in relationships. You keep giving chances because you fear being alone. You ignore patterns because you remember potential. But potential without effort is just a story we tell ourselves. When belief is strong, you stop falling in love with what could be and start honoring what actually is. You understand that consistency is not too much to ask. It's the minimum. Daily life gives constant tests of standards. Someone speaks to you harshly, and you choose whether to address it or absorb it. Someone oversteps your time, and you decide whether to correct it or stay silent. Each decision trains your life how to treat you. Standards are not set once. They are reinforced daily. Here's the truth many avoid. People rise or fall to the standards you live by. When you accept less, less finds you. When you tolerate confusion, confusion stays. When you normalize disrespect, it becomes familiar. But when your belief in your value shifts, life feels that shift immediately. Conversations change, access changes, energy changes. Raising your standards will feel uncomfortable at first. It will feel like you are being difficult, demanding, or unrealistic. That discomfort is not because your standards are wrong. It's because your old patterns are being challenged. Growth always feels unfamiliar before it feels right. God does not reward self-neglect. Believing in your worth is not arrogance. It is responsibility. You are entrusted with a life, and how you live it matters. When you raise your standards, you are not asking life for more. You are deciding you will no longer accept less. And here's what happens when belief and standards align. Peace replaces chaos. Clarity replaces confusion. You stop chasing and start choosing. You stop explaining and start deciding. Life begins to feel intentional rather than reactive. In the end, your standards will never rise higher than your belief. But the moment you truly believe that your life carries meaning, your standards will follow without effort. You will walk away sooner. You will settle less. You will protect more. And not because you became cold, but because you finally understood your worth. There is a quiet moment when you realize that staying the same hurts more than changing. That moment doesn't arrive with noise or drama. It shows up when your heart feels tired of repeating the same cycles, when your mind is exhausted from justifying situations that no longer fit who you are becoming. Courage is born right there, in the space between comfort and truth. In daily life, courage doesn't always look heroic. Sometimes it looks like a deep breath before a difficult conversation. Sometimes it looks like walking away without explaining yourself for the 100th time. Sometimes it looks like choosing peace over familiarity. We often imagine courage as something loud and fearless, but most of the time, courage is quiet, trembling, and deeply honest. People stay in places that drain them, not because they are weak, but because comfort is convincing. Familiar pain feels safer than unfamiliar freedom. You know how the story ends where you are, even if it hurts. Courage asks you to step into a chapter you can't fully see yet. That's frightening. But God never designed you to live your entire life inside what feels safe, but keeps you small. Look at everyday situations. Someone stays in a job where their efforts are overlooked because at least it's predictable. Someone remains in a relationship where they feel unseen because starting over feels overwhelming. Someone silences their voice in family settings because conflict feels heavier than self-betrayal. These choices don't come from laziness, they come from fear of loss. Courage doesn't deny that fear, it moves forward anyway. Courage means accepting that self-respect is a cost. When you choose yourself, you may lose people who only love the version of you that was easy to control. You may be misunderstood. You may be labeled as changed, but what people often call change is actually growth refusing to apologize. Courage is standing firm even when approval disappears. Daily life gives you small invitations to be courageous. You feel the urge to speak up and your heart races. You sense that something is no longer aligned and your mind starts negotiating. Courage is choosing honesty over avoidance. It's saying, this doesn't work for me anymore. Even when your voice shakes. That moment alone can reshape your entire life. God does not ask you to be fearless. He asks you to be faithful to the truth placed inside you. Courage is not the absence of doubt. It's the decision to act despite it. Every step towards self-respect will challenge something old habits, old attachments, old versions of you that survive by shrinking. There is a unique pain that comes with outgrowing people and places. It feels like grief, even when you know leaving is right. Courage allows you to honor that grief without letting it trap you. You can miss what was while still moving toward what must be. Letting go does not erase the past. It creates space for the future. Think about how courage changes your daily rhythm. You stop rushing to please. You pause before agreeing. You listen to your inner signal instead of ignoring it. Over time, your confidence grows, not because everything worked out perfectly, but because you learned you can survive discomfort without losing yourself. Courage also reshapes how you see failure. When you respect yourself, failure no longer defines you. It instructs you. You stop asking, what if I fail? And start asking, what if I stay here and never grow? That question alone is enough to move mountains. The world often rewards silence, compliance, and comfort, but inner peace rewards courage. God honors the ones who choose alignment over approval. Every courageous decision, no matter how small, builds self-trust. And self-trust is the foundation of self-respect. In the end, courage is choosing truth over familiarity, growth over comfort, and self-respect over fear. It is not loud, it is not perfect, but it is powerful. Because the moment you decide to honor who you are becoming, life begins to meet you there. The voice you hear most in your life is not the voice of the world, not the voice of critics, not even the voice of people close to you. It is your own, and whether that voice builds you or breaks you will quietly determine how high you rise, how long you endure, and how deeply you respect yourself. Long before life responds to you, you respond to yourself. In daily life, this inner voice speaks constantly. It speaks when you wake up tired and tell yourself, I can't do this again. It speaks when you make a mistake and immediately think, I always mess things up. It speaks when you see someone else succeed and whisper, that could never be me. These words may feel harmless because no one else hears them, but they shape your reality more than any external opinion ever could. Most people would never talk to others the way they talk to themselves. They encourage friends, show patience to loved ones, and offer grace to strangers, yet punish themselves with harsh judgment. One small mistake becomes proof of failure. One rejection becomes confirmation of unworthiness. Over time, this inner dialogue becomes a silent prison. Think about everyday moments. You're late once, and your mind says, you're irresponsible. You struggle with something new. And the voice says, you're not smart enough. Someone criticizes you, and instead of filtering it, your inner voice amplifies it. That voice doesn't just describe situations, it defines identity if left unchecked. God placed strength, creativity, and potential within you, but the inner voice determines whether those qualities are activated or buried. When your self-talk is filled with doubt and shame, even opportunities feel threatening. You hesitate. You shrink, you overthink, not because you lack ability, but because your inner voice keeps reminding you of who you think you are not. How you speak to yourself during difficulty matters most. Anyone can be confident on good days, but on hard days, when plans fail, when energy is low, when progress feels slow, your inner voice decides whether you rise or retreat. If the voice says, this is hard, but I'm learning, you grow. If it says, this proves I'm not enough, you stall. Daily life constantly tests this. You try something new and it doesn't work the first time. Do you say, I'm failing? Or do you say, I'm in process? You receive feedback. Do you hear it as guidance or as an attack? You feel behind in life. Do you tell yourself, I'm running out of time, or I'm moving at my own pace? These choices shape your emotional resilience. Your inner voice also influences what you tolerate. If you constantly tell yourself, this is the best I can get, you accept less. If you repeat, I don't deserve better, you stay stuck. Self-respect weakens not because people disrespect you, but because your inner voice has already agreed with them. Changing your inner dialogue does not mean pretending everything is perfect. It means being honest without being cruel. It means correcting yourself without condemning yourself. It means recognizing flaws without attaching shame to them. Growth requires truth, but truth does not require abuse. Notice how your body responds to your own words. When you tell yourself, I can't handle this, your shoulders tense, your breath shortens. When you say, this is challenging, but I will figure it out, your body relaxes slightly. The nervous system listens to your thoughts. Peace begins internally before it appears externally. God created you with the ability to speak life or drain it. Words are not just sounds, they are signals. Repeated thoughts become beliefs, and beliefs become behaviors. When you change how you speak to yourself, you don't just feel better, you act differently. You try again, you speak up, you stop abandoning yourself at the first sign of discomfort. Daily practice matters. Catching one negative thought may not feel powerful, but consistency transforms identity. Each time you replace, I'm not good enough, with I'm growing, you reclaim a piece of self-respect. Each time you speak to yourself with patience, you rebuild trust with yourself. Your inner voice should sound like guidance, not punishment, like accountability, not humiliation, like encouragement, not fear. Because the way you talk to yourself becomes the standard for how others treat you. In the end, self-respect is not just about boundaries or courage. It is about companionship with yourself. When your inner voice becomes supportive, honest, and steady, you stop fighting yourself. And when you stop fighting yourself, life feels lighter, clearer, and more aligned with who you were created to be. There is a moment when you stop chasing life and life starts responding to you. Not because you became louder, richer, or more powerful, but because you finally aligned with your own value. When you respect yourself, something invisible shifts. The same world, the same people, the same circumstances, yet suddenly doors open, conversations change, and opportunities appear where resistance once lived. In daily life, this shows up in subtle ways. When you stop over-explaining, people listen more closely. When you stop rushing to prove yourself, your presence carries weight. When you no longer tolerate confusion or disrespect, clarity replaces chaos. Life doesn't respond to words, it responds to standards. Think about how people behave when you respect your own time. You arrive on time. You leave when you say you will. You don't cancel your own priorities for last-minute requests. Slowly, people adjust. Meetings become more organized. Commitments are honored. Because you demanded it, but because consistency taught them what you expect. Self-respect also changes the energy of your decisions. You choose environments that align with who you are becoming. You invest energy where it grows, not where it leaks. You stop forcing outcomes. And what's remarkable is that when you stop forcing, things begin to flow. The effort you once spent chasing approval now goes into building alignment. Look at everyday situations. Someone who once overlooked you now asks for your input. Someone who once took advantage of your availability now respects your schedule. Someone who once spoke carelessly around you now measures their words. These shifts aren't coincidences. They are responses to the way you show up. Life responds when your actions and values match. When you say no without guilt, your yes becomes powerful. When you walk away without bitterness, you create space for better connections. When you stop trying to convince people of your worth, you allow life to place you where you are already valued. God designed life with balance. When you honor what you were given, your time, your energy, your voice, life honors you back. Not instantly, not magically, but steadily. Respect compounds. It builds momentum. It creates trust between you and your own path. Daily life gives you feedback constantly. When you respect yourself, stress reduces because you're no longer living in constant contradiction. Your words match your actions. Your decisions reflect your values. That alignment creates calm. And calm attracts clarity. You stop chasing what drains you. You stop competing where you don't belong. You stop proving what doesn't need proof. Instead, you move with intention. And intention changes outcomes. People feel it. Opportunities sense it. Life meets you at the level you choose to live. Even setbacks feel different when you respect yourself. Rejection no longer feels personal, it feels directional. Delays no longer feel like failure, they feel like redirection. You trust the process because you trust yourself. And that trust creates resilience. When self-respect becomes your foundation, you stop measuring success by applause. You measure it by alignment. Peace becomes your indicator. Clarity becomes your compass. And life responds by removing what no longer fits and introducing what does. This doesn't mean everything becomes easy. It means everything becomes honest. You are no longer pretending, performing, or pleading. You are participating in your life with integrity. And integrity carries its own reward. In the end, when you respect yourself, you don't need to fight for your place. Life makes room. Not because you demanded it, because you finally showed up as someone who knows their worth. And life, without words, responds accordingly.